Good evening. Thank you all for being with us this evening. I'd like to call to order the October 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission. Let's begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to read the ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which would have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on any matters that the county commissioners vote on at our meeting this evening. I would also like to announce that any members of the public who use the county's parking facility next door to attend this meeting can get validation for your parking pass from security on your way out. All right, we come to the consent agenda. Are there any questions from any commissioners about any items on the consent agenda? Do any members of the public have any questions about any items on our consent agenda? All right. We do need to add an agenda item to our meeting this evening under new business, which is consideration of a budget amendment to increase funding for the Asheville City and Buncombe County school districts. Is there a motion to add consideration of a budget amendment to our agenda? And it needs to be. Great.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, without, by consensus, it is added. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda and to follow the remainder of the agenda as published with the addition of the budget amendment just added?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Before we move on to public comment, the commissioners have a need to hold a brief closed session. Mr. Frew, would you explain the purpose of the closed session?
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to General Statute 143, 31811A3, asked to go into closed session for an attorney-client matter. The matter is Buncombe County versus Wanda Green, Michael Green, Selena Green, Buncombe County Superior Court file number 22, CVS 2473. And we'll also request that the board, to take action in open session, return to open session and take official action and let the public know what your decision is.
Okay, so if we, following the closed session, wish to take action, we would also need to add to our agenda an additional item to take action on the legal matter you just referenced.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. But we don't need to do that now. We can decide that when we come back. All right, very good. All right, we just approved the closed session, right? Okay, all right. We're in closed session. We'll be back in just a few minutes. session?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Commissioners, I'd like to ask for a motion to add one additional item to the agenda, which I'd like for us to go ahead and take up right away. Is that permissible, Mr. Frew? Okay, great. I'd like to add, or can we have a motion to add an item to the agenda for consideration of a legal settlement?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, I would like to invite Philip Anderson, who has been legal counsel representing Buncombe County, along with his law partners, on the matter of Buncombe County's efforts to recoup misappropriated funds by the former county manager, Wanda Green. So, Mr. Anderson, if you could come up, and we'd like to hear the results of a recent mediation regarding the county's civil action against Wanda Green.
Thank you. My name is Philip Anderson. Judge Ron Payne and I of the Van Winkle Law Firm have been representing the county in several legal actions related to Wanda Green and malfeasance during her service of the county. Today, we're here to ask for the Commissioner's approval of a mediated settlement agreement that would resolve the pending fraudulent transfer action against Wanda Green, her son Michael Green, and her daughter-in-law Selena Green. By way of background, and please cut me off or redirect me if I wax too long, but by way of background, Ms. Green retired as county manager in June of 2017. Shortly after that, federal criminal charges were brought against her, alerting the county to issues during her service. The county approached Judge Ron Payne, and he began spearheading, at the commissioner's direction, actions to try to recoup funds that had been diverted or misappropriated. That led to the filing of a couple of different lawsuits, one related to insurance that she had purchased without authorization, one primarily relating to kickbacks and bribes to a contractor, resulting in trips to Budapest and Vienna and Napa Valley and the Keys and other places. In January of 2019, there was an original settlement with Wanda Green that was a limited release that released her from certain specified claims in exchange for her payment of $750,000 to the county. Before that and after that time, we also recovered funds from others. Former Assistant County Manager John Creighton, Mandy Stone, Michael Green paid $40,000 in connection with the limited release for some issues we found with him. Ultimately, Commissioner Ellen Frost paid $175,000 to settle certain claims against her related to equestrian issues that arose after the limited release given to Ms. Green. We brought a lawsuit against Ellen Frost that led to the payment of the $175,000. We also named in that lawsuit Ms. Green. Ms. Green did not come to the table to try to resolve the claims against her related to the equestrian matters, and so we were able in August of 2021 to obtain a judgment against Ms. Green related to the equestrian contracts and expenditures in the amount of $419,371.96. After that, we learned of fraudulent transfers that Ms. Green was making to her son and daughter-in-law. Fraudulent transfer is a transfer made with intent to defraud creditors, to try to put assets beyond the reach of creditors in order to avoid payment of debts. The county had a claim against her, a judgment against her in the amount exceeding $419,000, and instead of making payments to resolve that, she was transferring cash and other assets to her son and daughter-in-law. In 2022, with the commissioner's approval, we brought a fraudulent transfer action against all three of them, Wanda Green, Michael Green, and Selena Green. We developed evidence to see what we could recover. There's a cap, a ceiling on what you can recover in a fraudulent transfer action. You're either going to be capped by the amount of the debt you're owed or the value of the transfers that you can show. And in this case, we had a judgment that was in the principal amount of just over $419,000. So we mediated with Ms. Green, Mr. Green, Michael Green, and Selena Green on September 22nd. We reached a mediated settlement agreement subject to the commissioner's approval, and I will provide you the terms again for the mediated settlement agreement for your consideration. Pursuant to the agreement, all three of the Greens will enter a consent judgment in favor of the county in the amount of $502,500. The Greens shall pay $150,000 against this consent judgment by October 22nd of this year. On October 22nd of this year, they shall also provide a promissory note for the balance of $352,500. They will secure the promissory note and its payment by deed of trust, a first lien deed of trust against the home of Michael Green and Selena Green. They will be allowed to make payments over time, but must make all the payments under the schedule no later than December of 2025. The payments are front-end loaded so that $335,000 of the total amount of the total $502,500 will be paid by the end of February of next year. After that, they'll continue to make payments to get to the full amount, but it'll be roughly $25,000 per quarter until the payment is satisfied. They've made a representation of warranty that there's no other malfeasance other than what's been disclosed in the litigation that's occurred to date. And upon full payment of the consent judgment and the promissory note that mirrors it, the county will provide a release to the Greens. Do you have any questions? Oh, well, let me say this. Under the commissioner's direction, as I've referenced, Judge Payne and I have pursued actions against the contractor who is providing the bribes and the kickbacks and other former public officials who were profiting and benefiting wrongfully. We were able to have a couple $1 million worth of insurance policies that have been obtained without authorization rescinded to recover those funds. With approval of this settlement and with payment of this amount, our calculation is that the commissioners would have recovered just under $4 million of funds that were misappropriated or diverted in the 5.5, 6.5 years that we've pursued this.
Commissioners, are there any questions from Mr. Anderson? All right. Is there a motion?
So move.
All right, we have a motion and a second to support a settlement consistent with the terms outlined by our legal counsel, Philip Anderson. Any further discussion? All right, well, I would just like to express my appreciation to you, Philip, and to Judge Payne. This has been a long process, and but you have been very diligent and very effective in helping to recoup the taxpayer funds that were misspent by the former manager and her colleagues and former Commissioner Frost. So it's taken a long time to get here, but a lot of these legal processes, they simply take a long time, right? And so we appreciate you not taking your eye off the ball and getting what I think is a very effective settlement on this particular matter where county funds were spent in ways that were never approved by the commission and not disclosed to the taxpayers. So thank you. And I want to thank Commissioner Moore and Whitesides for participating in the mediation that was required as part of the process, and which helped bring forward this really effective settlement for the taxpayers. So thanks to all of you. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, get back to our published agenda. And the next item on our agenda is public comment. We've got a list of folks that have signed up who wanted to speak during public comment. And let me just go over the procedures real quick. The time limit for comment to the board is 3 minutes, and folks will get an orange light when there's about 30 seconds left, and then a red light when your 3 minutes is up. And we do ask that you discontinue your public comments when your time's up, because we want to give everyone the same amount of time. And I'll go through the list of folks that have signed up. If there are any other folks who would like to speak during public comment, once I'll go through the list of those who signed up, there'll be an opportunity to do that. So anybody who wants to address the board will have a chance to do so. All right, the first person that is on the list, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name, Timothy Lloyd.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Lloyd, and I'm a custodian at Asheville Middle School and the president of the Asheville City Association of Educators. 4 months ago, I and about 100 of other public school staff in here came here with one request. The request was to fully fund the proposed budgets of Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools. Back in June, the decision of the commissioners was to give our schools a little more funding and then reevaluate that decision after the General Assembly decided on this year's statewide school funding. If you're not aware, the General Assembly budget came up way short. For the majority of public school workers, this supposed pay increase in the budget is still a pay cut when you compare it with inflation. That's 4 months that we spent waiting just to get a budget that still underfunds our schools. 4 months and nothing changes. And after those 4 months, a phrase has been repeating in my head. That is, if you have the means at hand, you have the responsibility to act. I'll say it again. If you have the means at hand, you have the responsibility to act. Does Asheville and Buncombe County have the means? I believe so. There are tremendous amounts of wealth within Asheville and Buncombe County. Houses are selling for over $1 million all the time. I've even heard of some apartments that are selling for millions of dollars. And our state government is giving away millions of dollars annually that should go to our public schools and giving it to millionaires to subsidize their children's private school education. Believe me when I say this, in North Carolina, we have the means at hand. Millions of dollars worth of means. Yet our schools are in a funding crisis. And let me make it clear to the commissioners, you are not the reason why our schools are so underfunded. You are not the reason, but if you have the means at hand, you have the responsibility to act. If we are in a funding crisis and you have a way to help it, you have the responsibility to act. That is why we are here. You are not at fault, but you do have the power to help. We thank you for what you already decided to do back in June, but we all know it's not enough. If you have the means at hand to make our schools as good as they deserve to be, then you have the responsibility to act. That is all that I'll leave you with. Thank you. Act now.
All right, thank you, Timothy. Thanks for being here. Next is Christina Horton.
Hi, I'm Christina Horton, a veteran classroom teacher at Hawk Creek Elementary and a resident of Candler. Thank you, County Commissioners, for your service to our wonderful county. You have a tough job, deciding how much taxes to collect from hardworking taxpayers and then how to distribute those funds to the many service providers of this county. I know it isn't easy. I know nobody wants to pay more taxes. But let me ask you something. What happens to communities that have failing public schools? Do those communities attract businesses? Do those communities attract citizens that contribute to the community? Of course, the answer is no. Right now, our schools are not failing. Public school staff across the county are working very hard to provide quality education to students. I'm proud to say that I'm a Buncombe County school teacher. However, there's a real big threat that most Buncombe County schools are facing right now. This threat will only grow if there is no intervention. It could destroy the quality of public education in this county. That threat is a lack of qualified applicants to open school positions. I can personally testify how a lack of qualified teacher applicants impacted my school this year. My grade level teaching team, along with the support of our administration, opted not to have a fourth teacher in my grade level this year. Now, keep in mind, I personally believe small class size is super important to class success. The reason our school staff decided to stick with 3 larger classes is because we saw firsthand last year what happened without the stability of a qualified, effective teacher in another grade level. Not only did that particular class suffer, but so did the whole grade level, and to a certain extent, the whole school. At the end of last year, my school regained stability, and this year you can feel that Hall Creek is standing on solid ground. We are regaining our reputation for providing a quality education. We've had to shuffle teachers and make bigger class sizes for that to happen. This is not a long-term solution. Eventually, we will be forced to hire unqualified and ineffective teachers unless something changes. I remember 20-something years ago that there was a long line at a job fair in Asheville. Went out the building, it was huge. People were lined up to work here. Now, principals are only finding 1 or 2 applicants, and often they're not the cream of the crop. We need to be at a place again where experienced and effective public school teachers want to work here. Our children and families deserve strong public schools. I know the state has dropped the ball on their responsibilities to fully fund public schools. We are relying on you, county commissioners, to pick it up and fully fund our school staff. By the way, that's 7% supplement increase for staff that we're asking, not 2, 7%. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Andrew Clark.
Hello, what an honor and privilege it is to speak here today for those that answered the nation's call, then, now, and those in the future that we may never meet. As Legislative Chair for Black Mountain VFW Post 9157 and Legislative Chair for Hendersonville American Legion Post 77, and speaking here today as Legislative Director for Bedingfield-Scheidel Chapter 14 Disabled American Veterans, the DAV is a nonpartisan veteran service organization dedicated to a single purpose: empowering veterans to lead high-quality lives with respect and dignity. While it is essential that we address all environmental concerns, such concerns should focus on the comprehensive approach that combines individual responsibility, education and awareness, and innovation to tackle the problems. Because it is very clear, Raleigh's budget doesn't grant our freedom of press, but December 15, 1791 added the Bill of Rights. While local leaders spoke to reduce ways of such liberties, the U.S. Senate agreed to Senate Resolution 348 last month, Golden Star Family Remembrance Week, resolution that recognizes the sacrifices of fallen service members and the Gold Star families who will never be forgotten. Those that gave the ultimate sacrifice defending the Bill of Rights have turned over in their graves out of sheer embarrassment of local leaders attempting last month to reduce such rights with proposed bans. But today's a new day. A new budget. Local leaders have the opportunity to keep the promise for a price paid, becoming an effective community partner and setting the new standards as outlined in Senate Resolution 208, officially establishing November 12th as National Warrior Call Day, a resolution recognizing the importance of connecting service members and veterans to supporting structures that are necessary for transitioning back to civilian life. With this new budget, we encourage local leaders to invest in military members and veterans, emergency services, education, and American essential workers that make, protect, and defend the American way of life. As a descendant of a generation of farmers, I'm reminded of the words of Jim Rowe, quote, "Those that ain't good at planting seeds in the spring ought to be good at begging in the fall," end quote. I've heard that there are only 2 types of beggars in this great American system: our enemies, foreign or domestic, and a politician seeking our votes at the end of the year. I yield back.
Thank you, Andrew. Next is Pepe Acebo.
County Commissioners, I come before you today to ask that you reconsider the education funding. You've added that to your agenda. I appreciate that. I was really moved earlier today in the early childhood education meeting when Commissioner Jasmine Beach Ferrara talked about how long we've been waiting for the state to be able to come up with a bipartisan solution to fund education, and how we've been waiting for the state to fulfill the promise of the Leandro court case, and how we have been waiting for the federal government to invest in public education. And we are at a point now when we are realizing, and this was a very good point, that the Calvary that we're waiting for is us, is you. I ask that you fully fund the Buncombe County Schools budget as it was proposed and the Asheville City Schools budget as it was proposed, and that you consider that the requests that came before you are less than the 7.28% cost of living increase that you recognized was important for other Buncombe County school staff. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, next is Soren Peterson.
Hello, Commissioners. I was told that I would be allowed to speak for 10 minutes on behalf of the community here today. I want to start by, again,
You've got the numbers, so yes, yes, you can.
thank you. I wanted to start again by saying what I've said at the previous two public comments we've had when it comes to funding our teachers here in Buncombe County, which is to say that by every definition, by every metric, the state has failed. The state has failed its teachers. Just by the measure of inflation, teachers are making inflation has gone up 27%. The starting salary for a teacher in North Carolina has gone up 11. Teachers in North Carolina have seen their wages drop from $45,000 to $39,000 adjusted for today's salary when you adjust for those inflation numbers. And the state doing that is unacceptable. It is infuriating to see that we are ranked 46th in the country when it comes to starting teacher pay. But as I tried to make in the past two meetings, this is not a job solely of the state. Buncombe County is the single most expensive community in all of North Carolina. I've said before, inflation has gone up 27%. The cost of living across all of North Carolina has gone up 45%. But when you dial in at Buncombe County, it's gone up 89%. The cost of rent since 2017, since the county commissioners last adjusted their local supplement, it has gone up 110%. The cost of rent here has nearly doubled. A renter paying for a one-bedroom apartment in Buncombe County today should put aside over $18,000 to do so. Someone paying taxes, property taxes in North Carolina to live here, in order for them to be paying that same amount in taxes, would need to own a property valued at $3.6 million. So, while I can appreciate the folks over here who have come before you and said that this is a job of the state and the state has failed and we need you to step in and do what the state has not done, the fact is that even if the state had been accomplishing what we had sent them there to do in representing their communities, the county would still need to be doing more. I sent you all an email yesterday. I apologize it came in so late. It took quite a while to work on, in which I tried to put these perspectives in numbers. But I wanted to come here and give public comment just to reiterate them and speak them again. To start, again, the state has failed. But in the state failing, there is still a need for us here at the local level. As I mentioned, rents have gone up 110% since the local supplement was last adjusted. Cost of living has gone up 89%. Even when you adjust for inflation, the state cost of living has gone up 14%. We could say that the state really should be more be doing more to make sure that a teacher is still paying the same amount towards cost of living that they were in 2017. But again, locally, those numbers have gone up 48% faster, or sorry, when adjusting for inflation, the cost of living here in Buncombe has still gone up 48%. The cost of rent here in Buncombe County, even when adjusting for inflation, has gone up 65%. If the state was doing their job, I do not think we would be asking them to account for the single most expensive county in this entire 100 county community. And the same is true when you adjust for those state factors, when you adjust for state cost of living, when you adjust for state rent. State rents across the states have also gone up by quite a bit. But even when you adjust for the increase in rent across the state, Buncombe is still growing its rent costs at 30% more than the rest of the state. Now, I would love to say that the state had done their job. And if they had, we would be having a conversation about, you know, what is the proper role of the local supplement? Because if the state had done their job, they would have put out a budget that doesn't put starting teacher pay at $39,000. They would have put out a budget which puts starting teacher pay at $55,000, just to adjust for inflation. But they haven't. And I think that everyone here understands that we are not coming before you and asking you to put forward a 60 or 70% local supplement to make up that entire gap. However, if the state was doing their job and Buncombe was trying to stay in line and keep the cost of living at that same percentage as it was in 2017, we would be coming before you and asking for a 33% starting local supplement, because that is the amount that would end the gap between a state teacher and teacher in our very expensive local community. But teachers are not even coming before you to ask for that. In fact, as I said at the prior meeting, the 7% increase in the local supplement, which would bring starting teacher supplement from 8.5% to 15.5%, would not even bring a starting teacher in Buncombe County to the living wage. A starting teacher in Buncombe County will still be at, hold on, I have lots of tabs. A teacher starting in Buncombe County today would be making, would be making 94% of a living wage. In 2017, that number was 156%, living wage and a half, and now it's below that number. Rent is even higher than that. A teacher starting in 2017 would be making a third above living wage. They would be making 133% of living wage. In Buncombe County today, even with the 2% increase to the local supplement that the county is planning on accepting, a teacher will be making 72% of the rent cost threshold, which means that they will be paying 42% of their pre-tax annual income towards rent. That is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to ask our teachers to come to work every day, teach our students, be there for our students' needs, and then go home and spend almost half their salary, their pre-tax salary, towards living in our community. And I want to add another thing here, which is to say, what does 2% actually do for us here? And I've kind of said it throughout the speech, but 2% does not get us, it doesn't adjust for inflation since 2017. Starting teacher will be from $48,000 down to $43,000, so $5,000 less. 2% increase does not restore the cost of living wage adjusted rate either, as a teacher will be paying 36% of their salary towards living wage when it was 21% in 2017. It also does not restore the rent adjusted amount that they're being paid, as they will have gone from paying 23% of their salary towards rent to 42% of their salary. So 2%, I'm sure there will be people who can say thank you for 2%, but as someone who has looked at these numbers, I can't be thankful for 2%, because it does not bring us nearly close enough to where we need to be. And I think that 7%, which still does not get us to even the cost of living, would be enough. Just to make this point in one other way, our local organization, Just Economics, which puts out its living wage calculations, does a couple of things to create their number. They average across the past 4 years to make sure that there's stability in their model, and they ask that it be 1/3 of your income towards rent. And when I sent this message to you all as an email yesterday, I talked about why that metric is a little bit difficult. Because there are not a lot of other organizations that use a 4-year rolling average. Teachers right now and members of our community are not paying rent from 2021. They're paying rent for 2024. And while a 1/3 of someone's income is what landlords may require to show that they can have their tenant, the amount that landlords request of their tenants should not be how we measure living wage. And in fact, the Just Economics is an outlier when it comes to that number, because every other organization I could find, including the Department of Housing and Urban Development, uses 30% as their metric. So that's it, essentially. I really would appreciate, and I can send this to anyone else or resend it to you all, but I really would appreciate if you looked at the numbers that we're coming here to present. And I really would appreciate if you took the time to consider what a 2% increase actually does, which isn't much, and what a 7% increase would actually do, which also isn't much, but gets us a little closer to where we need to be. So thank you.
All right. Lisa Peterson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lissa Pedersen. I am a public school teacher in the Buncombe County Schools. I'm in my 13th year with the Buncombe County Schools, and I appreciate you listening to us. Part of the reason why, I'm also the vice president of the Buncombe County Teachers Association. What? Yes, we are. And the reason why we're here is because there's a state law saying that we cannot sit and we cannot have any collective bargaining rights. So if anyone's listening or watching online, we can't do what they're doing in Michigan. We're not allowed to strike by law either. And so what we do is we humbly hold our hat in our hands and we tell you our numbers, thank you for the numbers, and we tell you our feelings and we tell you our frustrations, but this is the microphone that we have. So when people say that, unions thought that they were illegal, no, we're not illegal. We just try our best with what we've got. And glad that you can hear us. Like we have said many times, most of this comes from the state. The state has fallen down on their duties. We have, at a time when our schools are underfunded, they've just passed universal vouchers. So if you've got your kids in private school and you're a millionaire, you can get money to keep your kids in private school. You don't need that money. If you're a millionaire, you don't need that money. They're also allocating more money for charter schools. And I have nothing against private schools and charter schools. What I have as a problem is that this is happening simultaneously, that the public schools are underfunded. But like Soren said in his presentation, Buncombe County is the most expensive place to live in the state. In fact, we are one of the most expensive places to live in the country. If you look at any metric, we are one of the highest levels. Now, if you're moving here from another state, you might not think as much. But anyone who's lived here more than 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we know that it's getting harder and harder to do with what we've got. And as Soren had said, the metrics is going down. I'm making less than what I made 10 years ago, and I'm a better teacher. I am a veteran teacher. A veteran teacher is someone considered anywhere from 15 to 25 years experience. There is no pay increase from the state for that amount of time, nothing. And yet, when they like to say that teachers got their raise, and it's an average of 7% over 2 years, my raise over 2 years is 3.6% over 2 years. And that's at a time when the cost of living has gone up exponentially, as Soren has said, especially here in Buncombe County. I am subsidizing you from being a homeowner. I am subsidizing you from having a mortgage, that it's not going up. I need you to help. I need you to subsidize us. 2% is not enough. We asked for 7% for a reason, because that's the minimum of what we need. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, anyone else would like to speak during public comment? I'm sorry, did you raise your hand? Lisa, okay, I'm sorry. Thought you might have. Anyone else? Okay, all right. Well, hey, we appreciate everyone who has taken time to come out and share your perspectives with the board on these important issues. And we will be taking up the budget amendment on school funding in just a few minutes. We've got a couple of items we need to get through before that under presentations. And the first one is a proclamation recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Commissioner Parker Sloan will read the proclamation. And Paulina Mendez is here for this item as well. Thanks for being with us.
Okay. Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas domestic violence, which can include physical, mental, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse, is a means of intimidation and violence to influence, violate, and control a partner involved in an intimate relationship. And whereas an average of 24 people per minute experience rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States, more than 12 million people over the course of a single year. And whereas domestic violence is a serious public health issue that results in billions of dollars spent annually in medical, mental health, and lost work productivity costs. And whereas the problems of domestic violence are not confined to any specific groups of people and can happen to anyone regardless of racial or ethnic identity, sexual orientation, education level, socioeconomic status, gender identity, or religious beliefs, and these problems are sustained by societal indifference. And whereas intersecting layers of identity like race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, ability, religion, spirituality, citizenship status, and spoken language in the context of American society make it easier for abusers to isolate, control, and create and sustain power over survivors within communities that have been marginalized. And whereas children who grow up witnessing domestic violence in their homes are deeply impacted and are more likely to have trouble in school, more likely to perpetuate and be victimized by violence themselves, and more likely to experience long-term mental and physical health challenges. And whereas survivors should have help to find the compassion, comfort, and healing they need, and abusers should be held accountable for their violent behavior. And whereas we know there is hope, the Buncombe County Family Justice Center collaborates to offer us a safe place for survivors of domestic violence. And in FY23, 56% of survivors access services at 2 or more partner agencies on their first visit, including forensic medical exams, assistance, creating safety plans, case management, counseling, criminal reporting, and legal support in one safe location, resulting in 94% of survivors reporting feeling safer. And whereas it is survivors of abuse who have been in the forefront of efforts to bring peace and equality to the home. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month is an opportunity to stand with survivors, to celebrate the progress we have made in combating these crimes, and to recommit to preventing domestic violence in our community by working together in order to build safer communities for all. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the month of October 2023 be proclaimed Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we urge our residents to make the commitment to stop domestic violence by speaking out against it and learning more about the resources available to survivors and their families. Chairman Bernie Newman.
Thank you all so much for the proclamation. I'm happy to be here. I'm also happy to turn it over to our helpmate representative tonight, Debin Garaguse.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Debin Garaguse, and I'm proud to be representing Helpmate today. Thank you for proclaiming October as the official month of domestic violence awareness, and thank you for supporting survivors. Thank you for investing in programs that save lives. This proclamation is a great way to break the silence and let survivors know that they matter and they are not alone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, the next item on our agenda is an update on the Ferry Road project.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. Tonight, Sarah Odio and I are going to provide an update to commission and members of the public on the Ferry Road project. As a note, this is a presentation item, so there are no decision or ask of the commission tonight, just an update on where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. So with that said, we're going to do something brave, which is a hybrid scenario here where Sarah's going to present and I'm going to talk and lead us off. And so we're going to go with, we'll get started once Sarah shares her screen.
I'll say host disabled screen sharing. So I'm unable to share at the moment.
So we're working on a technical difficulty. We've all been there, done this.
Never.
I will start by saying thank you for allowing us to join virtually for this presentation. We have a lot of engagement coming up and we're prioritizing being there in person for that.
And also with us, we have Marcia Parrott, also with the UNC School of Government DFI group, and y'all have met her over the past few years. I'm just stalling. As we get this presentation ready. But while we are stalling, I will say that our agenda is pretty straightforward. We can go ahead and talk through that. So we'll provide an overview of the project today, but specifically we want to spend time on the proposed master plan that Sarah has been working on with our team, and really want to spend some time talking about the next steps. Our next steps are to engage the public on this project. Not the first time that we've talked publicly about the Ferry Road parcel. We went through extensive engagement in '22. But now that we have a more defined scenario, definitely want to make sure that we revisit that with the members of the public and get their sense of what we're doing.
There we go. Woo, perfect timing. All right.
All right, Sarah, we can see your title slide.
Yep.
And
All
I think
right.
we're ready to jump to slide 3 when you are.
For all this time. Still a mission.
We can see your notes.
Yep. All right. There we
Talking about your favorite clients. We can see your title slide. If you could jump to slide 3.
Thanks, patience.
Hey, Tim, how about that internet stuff up in North Buncombe? That was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about that.
You're gonna say, like, how about those bulldogs? The weather's great. Teachers also great. I'm just gonna keep talking if this microphone doesn't go somewhere. Yeah, we do seem frozen. Okay. There's a technical difficulty and
Maybe it's reviving. I think it's alive.
Sarah, we can see you. Your slides are transitioning. Great. We're on slide 3. Yep, Sarah, we can't hear you. We can see you though. So Sarah, if you could move, well, I think we're good. Are we good? We're good. Let's go with it. So at this point, y'all can hear me. What I'd like to say is, so we employed DFI in 2022. They've been working with us to come up with some scenarios. As you remember, though, prior to working with DFI, we went through a process to gather public input from our community. The way that we viewed that public input was through the lens of the neighborhood, so those that are directly impacted, adjacent to the property. We looked at it through the perspective of stakeholder organizations, so organizations that have an interest in the property and sort of what happens to it. But we also talked to the public at large. And on this slide, what we're trying to show you is the feedback that we received, and I'm not going to walk through all of this, but we've specifically bolded some of the items that we really feel like this master plan sort of ticks and ties the boxes. And so a few items I want to stress. When we talk to those directly impacted by the project, the neighbors, they immediately start talking about traffic. What's the status of the road infrastructure? How are you going to get people in and out of the site? We feel our plan addresses that. Additionally, we heard a number of questions and comments about, the type of housing. Should this be rental housing? Should this be single-family home ownership? Are there too many rental units potentially coming to this part of town? And so as part of that process, we worked with Sarah and her team to do a market analysis to understand what's in the pipeline for housing types in our community. With stakeholder organizations, they said stress a mix of housing types. We can't have single family only. We can't have apartments only. We need to have the missing middle, which we've heard a lot of talk about. They said don't forget about the greenways, design with that on the front end. Don't just add it as an afterthought. And then they talked about conservation. The site's right along the French Broad River. Stormwater is an issue. There's also a number of tributaries that feed that river, so make sure you take care of those. When we talked to the public at large, we engaged those folks through virtual settings. We also did surveys, things like that. And we got some interesting feedback. For the goals, one of the primary, 60% of folks said, make this a model for sustainability. So when you look at this through the lens of what we'll be remembered by, make it sustainable. Additionally, folks, 76% of the time said, we need more green space, pocket parks, different parks, all of that sort of stuff. And so the plan that we're going to show you today, you're going to see a lot of that. And so we're going to transition to the next slide. Thank you. And so this project in general, when Commission sort of gave us the go-ahead to continue designing it, you told us to be housing forward. So at the very center of this idea is creating units, but specifically affordable units. And so you're going to see some layouts today in terms of the affordability. But what I want to say about this site is it's much more than just a housing project. It has a number of community features, and one of those central features is at its heart, which is conserving as much of the property as possible. So the layout we'll look at today, we're talking about conserving 60% of the site. So of 137 acres, that's about 72 conserved acres. So in addition to delivering that density, that affordability, 60% affordability, additionally, at 60% conservation, I apologize. So you can see, protected waterways and buffers, over 5,500 linear feet of tributaries on the site. We actually only cross one waterway at this point on the site based on our layout that we've done. Additionally, you can see under parks, one community green, 5 pocket parks, approximately 1 acre. From a recreation standpoint, a public recreation standpoint, almost 4 miles of greenways and trails on the site, but also thinking about where folks may park as they come to the site and building in trailheads with that parking availability. Also thought about what it takes to make a community work, and so we've programmed in 22,000 square feet that will be filled one day, hopefully by a childcare provider, potentially a clinic, the types of services that you would expect to have in your neighborhood. The goal of this at the end of the day was to talk about something that we're calling equitable development. And I think those words make sense to us, but the idea that someone who could live in affordable housing, that is housing for people that are low to moderate income, but still have sort of luxury amenities. This idea that you can live in a place where there's green space, where there's parks within walking distance. These aren't things that we always guarantee for folks that live in housing for low to moderate incomes. And so for us, this was central to the idea of the development. And so we're going to share a little bit more of that today. As we shift to the next slide, I'd love to know if Sarah is able to speak verbally or if I'm going to wing this whole thing.
That working?
Yes.
Okay, great. Ooh, I'm double screen. All right, awesome. All right, so I'll jump in
Thank you
here.
for saving Tim. Although you did great. You did really, really well, Tim. So.
I was
Well, he was supposed to do that bit, so it's not
You were supposed
too...
to do that part. Okay.
Before, I think just for the public's sake, I want to give a little bit more background on the work that went into figuring out what can happen on this site. So it is not just, a person with a piece of paper and a pencil kind of doodling and trying to figure out what we can fit. This was a kind of an intentional effort by a team of engineers, transportation planners, architects, to figure out the best possible development on the site and what would need to happen with infrastructure in order to make it work. I am with the Development Finance Initiative. We are with the UNC School of Government, and our organization is focused on helping local governments across the state do what they do. We are the largest training, advisory, and research organization in the US, and on an annual basis, we're working with more than 12,000 public officials. Our program, the Development Finance Initiative at the UNC School of Government, is focused specifically on real estate development and finance. So we work with communities like Buncombe County to help you attract private investment for development that you want to see done in your community. So we have that expertise, and we come in and we help you bridge the public and private interests in order to take all of that feedback that you heard from the community, take all of the ideas out of that initial visioning process and bring it to life. And doing that by helping you bring in that private investment, private development partner that will actually execute on this project. And so that is the work that we did and we have been doing with the county, with that team of experts, to come up with a plan that is feasible. And by that, we mean that is possible, that a private development partner could execute, but just as importantly, that meets public interests. And so we looked at the market, we looked very closely at the market and what Buncombe County needs and can support. That work with the architects and what you're going to see, those conceptual plans, that comes out of the site analysis, digging deep into what is possible within the physical and the regulatory constraints of the site. And then the financial analysis. And that piece is really all about figuring out if this is what you all want to do, what level of private investment can you bring to the table? So that development partner comes in, they're going to bring their lenders, they're going to bring their investors, and what, if any, public investment is needed to make a project work. And so when we bring projects to the table, they are feasible, right? They should work from both a public and a private sector point of view. Now, feasibility depends on meeting the guiding public interests, meeting your local interests for development. I will not read all of these, but they range from, as Tim described early on, from that feedback, creating a mixed income, multi-generational community, conserving at least 55% of the site, being a hub for recreational opportunities, providing access, including service or commercial uses that are harmonious with residential uses, increasing a well-paid commercial or well-paid employee base, and optimizing public investment and attracting private investment. The plan and
Sarah, you've frozen. So we're internet connectivity, which we can handle. What I would love to do, communications folks, could we jump to the presentation on that slide and then I'll just run it. Let's run it from here and we'll just do it.
I am. I'm in the office with Marcia, so we switched offices, but I can't switch the slides. So she's working on unfreezing it, and I'm working on opening it on this end. There you go. Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, it looks like my computer got totally kicked out. Right. I swear I came into this office because I don't trust my internet at home. And today's the day.
Sarah, why don't we present locally, and then I'll switch slides, and then you can speak. Does that work?
Yes.
Yep. So we'll present locally. Yep. Excellent. Cool. All right. So
Awesome. There we go.
I'm
Okay,
clicking.
next slide. Let's just get into the concept. Moving on. All right. What you see here is a plan of the site that is feasible, right? This is taking into consideration all of the ridges and the requirements for access and parking and stormwater. We have two main access roads that you can see here. So the main road coming up off of Brevard Road and a secondary access off of Ferry Road. So from Brevard Road, you can indicate kind of up this, it is a Asheville, so windy road, and you'll enter into the core of the site. And at that core, you will find a community green with a community center, basically, that will feature something like childcare or healthcare services. And so it's the primary building that's there. If you were to head left into those kind of dark orange, high density buildings, these are roughly 3-story buildings, apartments, about 270 units for rent. Crossing over the ridge into the north pad, there would be an additional 260 apartments as well. If you, as you get into the community green, made a right turn instead of a left turn, and you went down these two ridges, so you can see these fingers, these ridges, this is where the density starts to change. So you go from having some 3-story building apartments down to townhomes, duplexes, down through the ridges where you'll find single family homes. And here we have about 115 units. What you will find in this concept, if you go to the next slide, that's great. What you'll find in this concept is going to be a range from that low density where we're looking at home ownership opportunities that range from $195,000 for a single family home to upwards of $400,000. So restricted units mixed with unrestricted units. So when we say 400,000 plus, that's where the market could take it. That 195, for example, would be restricted to qualified low moderate income households. Next slide. When we look at that higher density, those are units that will be for rent, with rents ranging from 375 restricted to low income households up to unrestricted units, which could be upwards of 2,500 per month for a 3-bedroom unit, for example. So next slide. So I'm talking about low and moderate income households. Who am I referring to? Who will this community serve? So low income, we're looking at 60% of the area median income. And so you can see here, these are people that are working in your food prep, in fast food, whether it's restaurants. These are your personal care aides. These are your child care workers. Something that was abundantly clear to us when thinking about putting a child care space on this site was that the biggest challenge that child care providers are facing is the availability of child care workers due to the high costs of living in the area. So if you click it, yes. And so this development will also serve moderate income households. And these are single households that would be medical assistants, social service specialists. This always blows my mind. These are the people that are out there helping your low income households. These households would also qualify for restricted affordable housing in this development. And this includes your elementary school teachers, which as you heard a lot about today. So when we talk about reserving units for low and moderate income households that are affordable to low and moderate income households, these are the households that we're talking about serving. Next slide. So digging into that affordability and what these units would be, 54% of these units would be affordable to households that I have just described. If you click, it'll go. So we're looking at rental in the apartments down to, and so that rental, if you click it, we would have about 55 units affordable to extremely low income households, roughly 160 units for households that are low income, and about 55 units for moderate income households. The remainder would be restricted, would be unrestricted, or what we call market rate units. So the rents can go wherever the market would support. If you click through, the ridges will feature a home ownership unit. So these will have home ownership opportunities with roughly 50 units set aside, or homes set aside for low income households, 30 set aside for what we say is middle income. So it's between that 80% and that 100% of the area median income that you saw on the slide below. And then about 35 homes that would be unrestricted or market rate units. They would sell wherever the market would take it. Next up. And now, as Tim talked about early on, because it is so critical to what you're doing here, if you click, this concept features these residential units, really nestled is a cheesy word, but it's the truth, nestled within 72 conserved acres with about nearly, I think it's 2 miles of greenways that connect in to this residential development. So if you live here, you have direct access to these greenways that connect down to the Bank Creek Trail, that connect to the Arboretum, and everything that that has to offer. And I want to narrow in on this center, which is really a unique opportunity to offer some service-oriented space right at the heart of this community. So ideally, a child care center, there is demand, there is the potential for a child care center, there's interest from child care providers. It comes down to being able to hire, right? And also, we've had initial conversations with potential health clinics. This space is big enough to accommodate both. So next up. So what does this take, right? I talked about that feasibility early on, that we would bring you a plan that is feasible. And what would make this feasible, right, would be, if you click it, this is about a roughly $210 million project overall, public and private investment. The county would need to participate in the form of roughly $34 million. This is a net investment from selling, from infrastructure, from subsidizing those restricted affordable units exclusively. So remember that 54% of these units are affordable to low and moderate income households. 16% of what would go into this project would be public investment. So that is something that we look at as an important indicator, which is the private sector bringing more to the table than you all are to achieve these critical public interests. Next up. So just to give you an idea of where this goes from here, if you're prepared to proceed and if the community is prepared to proceed, the next step in DFI's process, working closely with the county, would be to go out and find a development partner to actually execute on this project. Now, you'll notice that there are lots of arrows. There's the development partner negotiations. This takes a lot of time. We want it to take the time that it needs to take in order to make sure that there are really strong agreements in place, securing the private developers' commitments to this project and making sure that whatever the county puts in is used exactly as you intended. So really, this is the agreement that's going to be in place to allow you to enforce your vision for this site. And then from there, the private partner would take this project and go off, start that pre-development work, start that site prep and that infrastructure, and begin construction on units. Now, I want to emphasize that the residential development is separate from the conserved area. The conserved area would go into the hands of the county or a conservation partner for that. It's a separate timeline. This is for the private development, the residential development. So do not expect to see if we follow this timeline, right? If we move on this timeline, you shouldn't expect to see sort of any dirt moving, as they say, or shovels in the ground until at least 2 years from now. So click. All right, next up. So I'll let Tim take it from here to talk a little bit about what we heard and kind of a little bit more about what we heard in the initial engagement, and then additional opportunities that are coming up for the community.
Absolutely. And before I jump into kind of those next steps, if commission has any questions or comments about the plan that's been presented, you should be familiar with it. Glad to take those now, but if not, I'll talk next steps. Great. So a big part of what we're doing is getting into sort of phase 2 of our community engagement. As I said, in 2022, conducted a number of sessions with those directly impacted stakeholder organizations, the public at large. We've already begun our next stage of engagement, and 2 weeks ago met with those directly impacted, so what I call the neighbors of the site, and shared with them a very similar presentation to what you're seeing today, which gave them a sense of what's potentially planned. Got some really good feedback, as you would expect. You know, anytime there's a large development near folks, that they're entitled to having opinions. Some of the things that we heard, were, an interest in more single-family home ownership, as an example. And so we heard that, no doubt, wanted to share it. From a density perspective, y'all know that, single-family home ownership doesn't allow for the greatest amount of units on a site, and so that's a consideration as we think about creating additional affordable units in our community, but wanted to share it nonetheless. Heard additional thoughts about the public recreation components and making sure that those were, appropriately maintained and things of that nature. And, we envision that being a part of our Buncombe County Parks and Recreation, and so we feel like that'll be addressed over time. Those were some of the main considerations we heard, and certainly wanted to share them. But additionally, want everyone to know that's watching or not, there's additional opportunities to stay plugged in on this project. And so those are on the screen now. On October 25th, that's a Wednesday at 5 p.m. at Enka Candler Library, we'll be hosting another neighborhood session. This neighborhood session involves mailings to all those within 1,000 feet of the property. This is a planning requirement working with the city of Asheville. Additionally, we'll be hosting a virtual meeting on Saturday morning, October 28th. Purpose of this is to provide some flexibility to folks who can't make it, on a weekday evening, and if a Saturday morning makes more sense. Additionally, we'll be hosting a meeting here at College Street on November 9th at 5:30. That'll be an in-person meeting to share the plan. We'll continue to gather feedback as we hear from folks, and we'll share that with commission as we move forward. But just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the opportunities to plug in. Additionally, we have a public input site, which is how we gather feedback for many county projects here. And so that's, publicinput.com/Ferry Road, where we'll be updating this presentation and materials as we proceed. So with that said, if there's any questions, comments, apologize for the technical difficulties, but.
All of the future engagement will be in person. I'm going to figure out how to make the virtual in person.
We'll do better next time. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I'll just share that I'm personally really excited about this project, and just some of the community feedback I heard was similar to what you mentioned. I heard excitement around the public benefit of the conservation, the trails, all of that, as well as the desire for more of the home ownership aspect of it. And also, people definitely appreciate the early childhood education, looking at that, as well as I heard aging, some services for those who are aging in our community, if that could possibly be looked into as co-located as well.
Thank you.
I'll also echo thanks for the tremendous amount of work that staff's put into this, and Sarah, for you as well. really appreciate a collaborative process where our community really can give some valuable feedback, and the intention given to making this something that's going to be right for Buncombe County specifically is tremendous opportunity. So thank you all for all your hard work on this.
Echo that as well. I think the one thing that I do continue to hear from the community members is how much they appreciate their opportunity to provide their input. While they may not ultimately like the final decision we make, they really have appreciated the opportunity to have their input and for their voice to be heard throughout this process. I think it's incredibly exciting from our affordable housing perspective to see what we are going to be able to do as a county to really make an impact in meeting the growing demand of affordable housing within Buncombe County. And again, the opportunity that this land provides us, as you so well said, Tim, to give folks who normally are not afforded the opportunity to be along the river, to have such a gorgeous view around them, I think is incredibly exciting for Buncombe County, and I'm really proud to be a part of that right now.
All right. Great presentation, everyone, and a great update. I know there's been a lot of work put into this, and there's a lot more to do, but as everyone has shared, we're excited about it. It's a great plan. It's gonna be a big lift, you know, and it's not, I'm sure there'll be issues we need to think through as we move forward, but it's a great vision for this property, and it'll make a real difference in the future for the county, both for outdoor recreation and preservation, and to meet this huge need for places that regular people can afford to live. So thank you so much. We look forward to further updates. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. All right. We do not have any public hearings. Ms. Pender, anything in our county manager report?
No, sir.
All right, we also do not have any old business, and we come to new business. And first item will be the item we added, which is consideration of a budget amendment for Buncombe County and Asheville City Schools. So. Good evening.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As you know, the General Assembly passed a budget. Unsigned bills approved by both chambers take 10 days to become law. According to the legislature's website, the budget is officially session law today. As you've heard, just as a reminder, the state sets salary schedules and ranges for school employees. That budget included an average 7% increase over 2 years for school staff. BCS provided us with an estimated 4% impact for FY24 for certified staff. With that in mind, you will recall setting aside some funds for consideration after the state budget passed and knowing what impacts the budget will have on the districts. So we're taking time today to refresh the board and community on, very briefly, on school funding and provide some contextual metrics before the vote on the amendment. The most basic question is, how much are we giving toward education? You can see from the table that we've been increasing since fiscal year 18, and the last 2 years have been the largest in a decade. To put that $113 million at the top into context, that's roughly 22 of the 49.8 cents tax rate, or nearly 45% of property tax revenue. As a reminder, these figures do not include the ACS supplemental taxing district. That's the additional 12 million, 16.5 including sales tax revenues that go to ACS. Folks residing in that district pay an additional 10.62 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. The next slide here you will have seen before. Beginning in fiscal year 2019, staff worked to create a funding model that would be provide some certainty and predictability to schools as they work on their budget preparation, as well as be sustainable to the county. The model proposed was the unrestricted revenue growth rate. And simply put, it's a way of saying the county expects this much revenue growth rate for this year, year over year, and that's what we will provide to schools. So comparing the unrestricted growth rate to the actual allocation spending growth, noting the student count on the far right. Specific to this slide, we've included the fiscal year 2023 ADM per DPI for both systems. And the the appropriation figure for 24, like the slide before, includes the appropriation of the additional penny of property tax revenue and the $1 million in prior budget revisions that you see here. Now, since the chart is in dollars, you'll see the compounding effect of the percentages, despite the fact that the percentages don't vary wildly from one another until you get to the most recent years.
Okay, I just want to make sure I just want to make sure I'm interpreting that slide correctly. Can we go back one?
Sure.
Is the blue bar would be the funding levels if we followed the formula of basically,
Correct.
however much the county's budget grows through property tax growth rate, sales tax revenues, like however much additional revenue we have, we just proportionally increase appropriations to the schools by that amount, then that's what that would look like. And then the purple bar is the actual amount that was appropriated over those years as we did not stick to our policy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right. Not, I don't know if it was an official policy, but following that formula idea. Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is that same rate information, just displayed visually, nothing different from what we just saw. However, we are including here the property tax revenue growth rate. And as you can see, the local current expense growth rate exceeds both the unrestricted revenue rate and just property tax revenue growth rate, specific to 23 and 24. Finally, as we look at education funding, trying to ensure schools are adequately funded while being good stewards of the tax rate. A couple months ago, we looked at other large urban counties and our neighboring counties. Unfortunately, data availability is limited. So this is data that the budget office worked to pull from budget documents of the counties listed. I have the full table in the appendix. You have that full table in front of you as well. That is quite a lot to look at, so this is really summarizing that data much more succinctly. Of our group of peers, we're third in per pupil expenditures based on the 2023 month 7 ADM. That was the most recent at the time that the table was created and includes the charter school count. Only Durham and Orange County have higher estimated per pupil expenditures. Of course, Orange County also has the supplemental taxing district, but those figures are not included here, just as Asheville City Schools supplemental taxing district is not included in our figures. The next metric included is tax rate. Obviously, we live in a high cost of living area, and trying to keep taxes low for residents is important. We're the 5th lowest rate, with only Catawba, Henderson, New Hanover, and Mecklenburg being lower. And finally, we're 7th or right in the middle of the 15 on local current expense as a percentage of the general fund expenditure total. So in summary, ranking pretty high on per pupil expenditures, somewhat on tax rate, and right in the middle on local current expense as a percentage of the general fund. These numbers do include, we are counting here, the appropriation of this penny and the additional $1 million from prior budget revisions. So the request for action this evening, an amendment's been presented to you to appropriate the additional penny plus $1 million in budget revisions, about $6.1 million in total. We've received confirmation from both districts that it would be enough to cover a 2% increase to local supplemental pay scales. Approving that amendment will take us up to the $113 million figure you've seen in this presentation. Any questions?
Any questions, commissioners?
Just for purposes of reiterating to us, you've always done a really good job during our budget retreats of explaining the way that this works, that while we allocate the funding, we ultimately do not have the final decision. That does go to the school boards per general statute. Can you remind everyone how that works, just for purposes of this evening?
Sure.
Thank you.
Unless stipulated in the budget ordinance, the dollars that are passed along to each of the school boards are then allocated based on the school board's decisions. So since that was not included in our budget ordinance, those boards then make those funding decisions.
And if we do the budget amendment tonight, the expectation is that the county school board and the city school board would further amend their budgets to reflect the increased revenue so that they could, again, it's, as Commissioner Edwards is saying, we can't direct them how to spend those funds, but we're doing a budget amendment now that we know where the state's landed. And so the expectation is that they would carry out budget amendments once we do to then allocate those funds.
Yes.
All right. There's the one other piece, which it's, maybe this is just a statement, or maybe you could add a little bit of commentary on it too, but part of what, the way the two school districts do their compensation of employees is a little bit different. Buncombe County schools have a supplemental payment, right, that is given to some of their employees, but it's given to their certified staff, right? So all the teachers and other staff that are designated as certified receive the supplemental pay, but the non-certified staff do not qualify for.
Right. They're right.
They're right. Okay. All right. So it is a question. So it's not a statement. So
Buncombe County schools and Asheville City schools do differ. Buncombe County splits their scale up. There's a flat rate
so
that
it's
is
just-
applied to the non-certified and a scaled for the certified.
so it's right. Thank you very much for that
Right.
clarification. So it's everyone gets a supplement, but it's different for certified and uncertified.
Right.
In the city schools, it's the same across the
Same
entire
scale.
organization, right? Okay. And so part of what the funding in last year's budget and this year's budget, where we're looking at, if we approve the budget amendment tonight, we're talking about a more than 26% increase in total county funding for local public schools, like in addition to like early childhood education funding, other places where you invest in public education. That's on top of this, 26% increase in funding. But a lot of, when the school came to us last year, a lot of their requests for funding was to address badly needed funding to improve pay for classified staff, right? Because, and honestly, it's like, it was a conversation I felt like was so long overdue because people were just making very little money and had received no pay raises for years and years and years, right? So, and a study was done to address what do we need to do around classified teacher pay. So a lot of funding last year went to that, and then a lot of this year's budget also goes to increasing pay for the classified staff, in addition to if the county schools hopefully support the decision to increase the supplemental pay, right? So this is just if you have any other comments on, I feel like there's a lot of attention on the supplemental pay, which is very important, but those are not the only pay raises that this 26% increase in county funding to schools is supporting. Is that right?
That's correct, and an excellent synopsis.
Okay, thanks. Other questions or comments on this item? So the specific amount of the proposed budget amendments, could you give us the exact amount, please?
Looks like it's
$6,109,667.
Thank you.
Okay, got it. All right, Commissioners, further discussion, or is there a motion?
motion to approve the budget amendment.
All right, further discussion. I guess just the only other comment I would make on this is, I support the motion for sure. and appreciate all the folks who've come out tonight, and we all appreciate the work that you do. We recognize, this North Carolina being 46th in the country, it puts us all in a really tough bind, right? It does. And so I think when I look at what the county's done last year and this year, I do feel like we are, at the local level, like we are on a strong track, right? Like there's no other county in the state that has increased their funding for public schools in a 2-year period by over a quarter, right? I think the county has a long history of trying to be, making public education a high priority. But if we look back at where the county was, 7 or 8 years ago, comparing to our peer counties around the state, it was a very respectable position. But we have moved up significantly over that period of time in terms of where Buncombe County ranks as one of the, we are funding more for our schools than Mecklenburg County, Wake County, Guilford County, Forsyth County. I mean, that was not the case. That was not the case, in years past. So I think we are making a lot of progress. And I think while as a state, we are certainly not where we want to be, or any sense, and it's not where we as a community want to be in the future. We want to continue this kind of progress and work with the school districts to come up with a plan to do that. But anyway, I just want to say I appreciate the hard work that goes into this. I hope people do appreciate that there is real progress being made at the local level, even as y'all do a great job being a voice, an advocate for the educators in our community, which is so important, and which this would certainly not be happening without. So anyway, thank you for all that you do. Any other comments? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, it's approved. The next item on the agenda is the 2024 insurance benefit update. And folks are certainly welcome to stay, but do not feel obligated to do so. All right, and Sharon Burke is here to help us out with this item.
Commissioner, tonight we have Larry Reese, who's our broker from USI.
Great. Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm obviously not Sharon. Sharon's out of town. My name's Larry Reese. I work for USI. We're your current employee benefit brokerage and consulting firm. I have about 11 pages to go over tonight that will walk you through the employee benefit programs and the budget for next year and current state of affairs and how things are running. And if I can work the clicker, let's see. So our agenda for our time together is, again, how's 2023 looking? What's the forecast for 24 and program recommendations for calendar year 2024? Through the first 8 months of this year, you're running about $2 million favorable, so about 9% favorable on your medical and pharmacy self-funded program. You have 19 large claimants that $125,000 is just half of the reinsurance amount. So this is a good way for you to gauge how many large claims do we have. That's a big predictor in how much you'll ultimately spend in any given year. That's coming from 11 employees, 5 spouses, and 3 children. And then we just like to look at where these 19 claimants, are they all in one plan, or they dispersed among each of the medical plan options that are available to your enrollees. And let me remind you, you have 4 medical plans. 1's closed, so 3 still take enrollment. And that's pretty good dispersion. So that would indicate there's not selection. That's a favorable and a good thing. And you've only had 2 large claimants exceed the reinsurance amount. I'll move from some financial parameters over to some other attributes of plan performance that just speak to the health of the plan. The plan's doing really well. Let me share with you how well it's doing. You deploy the Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO network in the community. That network, when people go into in-network providers, you're achieving a 54% discount, which is saving the county as a self-funded plan sponsor about $26 million. So that's fantastic. And this bullet is not here, but like 98 98.5% of all claims go in network. So big network, big discount, works for everybody, and you're having favorable results as a result of that. Member health engagement, so 13% might sound low. Let me just share that's a pretty good percentage. It's in line with Blue Cross Blue Shield book of business, is Bob, book of business norms. Your generic substitution rate, so this is pharmacy now. How often can a generic drug be prescribed? It can be prescribed about 85% of the time. When it's an option, how often is it being received by the consumer? About 98.5%. That's incredible. That's a really good statistic. Your medication possession ratio. So we all know in chronic conditions, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, any other chronic condition, if you stay on a drug regimen, you're likely to stay out of the hospital and out of the emergency room. So we study medication possession ratios, and yours are favorable. So that's good. You have a compliant consumer and enrollee in the health plan. Net results formulary is just a brand of a formulary that's a Coke Pepsi thing. But when Blue Cross is able to steer your members towards a low-cost drug that picks up savings for the county, again, you're a self-funded plan sponsor, and you're saving them over $200,000 in the most recent 12 months. Copay maximization program, this is mostly savings that go to your employees, not the county, but that's over $300,000. And then drug rebates, which do come back to the county, is over $1 million year to date, and that's an 8-month number, so that's fantastic results. So again, those are financial parameters and some statistical attributes about plan performance, but it's good. Things are favorable. Oh, went too fast. Let me back up one. I'm sorry for the eye test. This is a lot, but it's an important slide. We're trying to put together a scorecard for the county that really speaks to all the wonderful things the county's doing. Synergy is a relationship that you have that does the health risk assessments. They also do health advocacy and condition management. They work in collaboration with your on-site clinic, and they have a custom autoimmune program, which you have like 39 people with an autoimmune disease, which of those enrolls, they're seeing remarkable results. And then you see the impact. I would call this cost avoidance, not necessarily saving. So had these patients not sought care through the Synergy and participated in the health risk assessment, and then use that tool and that condition management to join and participate in an advocacy program, some of them, 39 in an autoimmune, claims would have been higher. And then with Southwest PT, very innovative program. You have a PT clinic. I think most of you know that. It's very favorable. I don't have the data yet. I can't come before the board and suggest to you that we haven't replaced a hip because of this. But I feel like based on the participation in the PT clinic, it's far better to have people doing PT regimens than it is buying hips and knees and shoulders. So I applaud the progressive thought in having a clinic available to your employees. You know your on-site clinic well. It is the glue and the underpinning of all these other items. I think it'd be very difficult to have them if you didn't have an on-site clinic. So I applaud that as the hub and the wheel. WellWorks is a partner that you use to distribute various challenges. That could be a running challenge, a walking challenge. And then under the Blue Cross program, that first one stands for Eat Smart, Move More, Weigh Less. So it's a comprehensive weight management program that also tries to get the behavioral side of that. And you have 20 enrollees in that, and that program's picking up steam since 2022. My strength is the old McLaughlin Young, so that's your EAP, your Employee Assistance Program for mental and behavioral needs, and you've got some good participation and traction in that. Smart Shopper is a program where the consumer, if they make the right choices in the Blue Cross network and they use some online shopping tools, there's something in it for them. And they can get some dollars back for choosing the right provider that's low cost with high outcomes. And you've got good participation in that, and you have some claim savings affiliated with that. DM is a disease management, CCM is chronic condition management program. Sorry, it was already an eye test, and if we thought the font would get even smaller. But that program is running well. There's cost avoidance with that program now, and the nurse support program and Teladoc are doing a good job of saving money. And then on campus, it says company, county initiatives, obviously. You have a 5K run, lunch and learns, and on-site initiatives. So pretty comprehensive program. And then a standalone EAP program as well. So what does that translate into? So if you recall, we kind of characterized your membership in high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Of the 65% in the high risk, of the people in high risk, 65% of them had some health improvement status in the past 12 months. That's fantastic. 35% of the moderate risk had some improvement, and that led to overall hospitalizations at an 18% average less and a cost of admission 23% less. So again, fantastic results that have a back-end financial impact. High-risk diabetic members dropped. I know that a 1%, not even a 0.7% drop doesn't seem remarkable. Statistically, that's fantastic. So that's great engagement as a result of all the things discussed on the previous page. And then your ER and urgent care utilization is below normative data. That suggests the clinic is being used appropriately, and the other things on the previous page in that comprehensive wellness package are being sought and used appropriately. And then your preventive screenings are up, right? We don't like zero spenders. We want people to go to the doctor every year for routine annual and physical exams. So that's good. We keep track of that, would also be the point. So roll that all into kind of a summary statement. Over the last 4 years, you guys have seen increases less than 1% per year for a cumulative 2.1 over 4 years. So we'd like to think that's a cost avoidance of around 10 million. And the next slide just offers a, hey, how'd you come up with 10 million? There's two, you're the blue line, if you will. The red line would be one measure you could grade yourself against, and the yellow is another. And so against the yellow line, you're at least 6.6 million favorable to those results, and compared to the worst, if you will. But the worst on the page, I'd really characterize it as kind of normative. You've outperformed others who aren't doing the things that you're doing in a progressive way by about $10 million over 4 years. So pretty good. On a $30 million budget, a couple million a year, that's pretty good cost avoidance. Moves us to 24. So for the 24 forecast, you're looking at 34.2 million. No increase to the employees, so the employees would stay their share of contributions to fund the self-funded medical plans would stay. Their payroll deductions would remain the same as they are today. And conversationally, based on current enrollment, that's about 2.7 million. So therefore, the overall increase would be entirely borne by the county, and that'd be about $400,000 or 1.2%. There are some slight modifications to plan design that come with that. The alternative to that was the current program that would be about $600,000 more. And the changes that come with the program are noted here in red font. So on the buyout plan, the out-of-pocket for a single would go from $1,600 to $2,000. The family would go from $3,200 to $4,000. And then you see standard plan, deductible would go from $525 to $600. Out-of-pocket, $1,600. You guys can see in the other changes by plan. And the last plan, the reason for the asterisks, HDHP stands for High Deductible Health Plan. That plan has some parameters with the IRS on minimum and maximum benefit features in order to have a health savings account. And so those have to change every year based on that IRS guidance. And those are the proposed plan changes for 24. Again, no employee premium changes, so I guess a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is premiums for current, and it would be premiums for next year for both the wellness compliant and the non-wellness premiums by plan for all 4 plans, and then for all 5 tiers of enrollment. Dental, no increase to core, and about a 7.4% increase to buy-up. So core 23 and core 24 remain flat. And minor increase, the highest increase is $5.53 per month for someone enrolled in family coverage on the buy-up dental plan. So very favorable. Again, great dues. And vision, no increase. Things remain flat and as they are today. And there's some upcoming events. You're in the middle of some of these now. The health risk assessments have already started. I think everybody knows that. And then the on-site clinic week for everybody to go do those. And then around the corner in November, we'll start the open enrollment season with benefit elections for January 1 of 24, excuse me, based on the information here. Try to move through that relatively fast. Are there questions that from the group that I can answer?
Could you remind me the 250K stop loss? Remind me how that works, please.
So that is a risk transfer. So the county is a self-insured plan sponsor. Technically, you don't really have to buy reinsurance. It's just kind of a good housekeeping thing to do. So you cede risk at some point. And so the way that works is you take the first $250,000 of losses per belly button. So whether it's an employee, a spouse, or a child, the first $250 of that is on the county as a self-funded plan sponsor. Any dollar over $250 in a calendar year is the reinsurer's problem. So we file and we seek reinsurance recoveries, reimbursements for those claims that exceed it. And surprisingly, $1 million claims used to be uncommon. Now $1 million healthcare claims in a calendar year are very common. So I think it's appropriate for the county to cede risk.
Welcome.
Right. If there's no other questions, is there a motion to approve the updates?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks for the great presentation and update.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Consideration of a resolution which would approve execution of a purchase contract with Southeastern Specialty Vehicles, Inc. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Jamie with the EMS Division Manager. So we're coming tonight asking for a resolution to go into a contract. So we have an ambulance replacement plan that we've been trying to implement over the last several years to make sure that we keep ambulances on the road to meet our operational guidelines and objectives. As you can well attest to the current auto state of delays in receiving automobiles, we're seeing the same thing on the ambulance side. We're not able to obtain ambulances in a timely manner. So talking with our common dealers, we're looking at a 24 to 36 month minimum for delivery of ambulances after placing the order. In our shopping process and talking with different distributors and manufacturers, we were able to locate 4 demonstration units through Southeastern Specialty Vehicles. So these were units that were bought by the manufacturer to build as spec units that they would use to take around the shows and use them as demonstrations for their sales staff. We have been able to work with them to be able to go ahead and purchase those chassis. They are pre-built, so we're able to do some of our customization to meet our operational needs. But in order to do this, we're looking to lock in so that those chassis can't be sold from underneath us with that. So our request tonight is to go ahead and enter into a contract with Southeastern Specialty Vehicles for these 4 demo ambulances. Payment and delivery will not be until FY25, so there's no funds being requested tonight. It's just given permission to enter into this contract. It will not exceed $1,427,850. These units also include idle mitigation technology on them, and in order to help meet our sustainability goals. So this is when the ambulance is parked. It will continue to run all the electrical systems, heat and air conditioning, but cut the engine off so there's no idle time. It also helps reduce wear and tear on the engines. We're finding that up to 30% of the life is actually idle time that we're seeing just sitting in the field with that. So any questions about this request from EMS?
I've got one, and I'm, of course, supportive, by the way, at the risk of putting Avril on the spot, but I've heard of a device, in addition to an ambulance, that essentially converts most of the equipment in the back to electric, essentially making the ambulance a hybrid vehicle that Jeremiah has kind of informed us of. I'm asking the question, is it possible to also pre-order those types of devices alongside this?
So the idle mitigation is that, so it is a lithium-ion battery system that will kicks on when the engine goes into park.
Exactly.
And so it runs. So that is part of this purchase.
Okay.
So all 4 of the ambulances would have this idle mitigation system. And this is basically it's kind of a hybrid. So you think when the vehicle stops, it cuts the engine off and continues to run your air conditioner, your radio, and things like this. This will continue to power all our electronics, all our equipment will continue to be charged. Our red lights will continue to flash, and heat control in the back of the ambulance would be maintained. And then if the battery got to a certain level, then the engine would kick back on and recharge the batteries.
Good job, Parker. You just got all this.
We have the best staff in the
Public
world.
health.
Motion to approve the resolution.
That was feedback from you guys.
Is there a second? Any other questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks for the update, and great plan. All right, board appointments. Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee.
Motion to reappoint Terry Rafinsky and Barbara Butcher.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, early childhood education.
There's two things we need to do here. The first would be, and these are recommendations coming from the committee. The first would be the appointment of Pam, or a motion, I'm sorry, to appoint Pam Holcomb into a retiree position, Diana Anthony into a community at-large position, and Heather Zanzig into a community at-large position.
Second.
Was that a motion?
That was the first motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, all right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And then the second is a motion to move Carol Steen from a community at-large position into the parent role on this committee, and that will leave us with one vacancy on the committee, which is a community at-large position.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that it? Awesome, great.
If I may ask a few questions about some upcoming vacancies for the Board of Adjustments. We have 2 applications for 3 positions, but they've been posted since November of 2022. So do the commissioners like to do interviews on the next meeting, October the 17th?
I'm sorry, for which positions?
For the Board of Adjustments.
And I'm sorry, how many positions again?
It's 2 applications for 3 positions, but they want to go ahead and do, or if y'all would like to, and this was suggested by the Board of Adjustments as well.
Okay, so there's three openings, and we have 2 applicants, and we've had vacancies for a long time on it.
Correct.
Okay. Let's interview those candidates, and if there's anything we can do to kind of draw some more attention to these openings, like this is one of the most important boards we have in the community. Hopefully other folks might become aware of this, and because it sounds like we need more applicants too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If we do, we will send you the applications that we do have prior to the interview, but if we receive more, we can go ahead and schedule those as well. And is that okay for October the 17th, our next meeting, or before our next meeting?
We do have affordable housing that day at 1 o'clock. So.
Before you answer, can I just give you one more potential
Sure.
interview? For Economic Development Commission, they have 3 applicants for 2 positions, and they have been posted for the 30 days, and they would like to know if you would like to do interviews. They have submitted recommendations for those 2, but they would like to know if you would want to do interviews for those instead of taking their recommendations.
Why don't you, if you could share the folks who've applied, so we have the information, then we could give
Make
them an
that
answer on that.
decision? Okay.
But I don't know who they are, so I would kind of want to know.
Yeah,
so.
I do have that information.
All right, so we'll look at that, and then we'll make a decision on either appointing them or doing interviews at
Okay.
the next meeting, but we just need a little bit more information on the recommendation. Okay, so we could do interviews on the 17th, but we would, we do have a meeting at 1. I mean, if we're only interviewing 2 people, we could probably squeeze it in even after our Affordable Housing Committee meeting. So we could do it at, like, we could just say, we're going to get done with that meeting by,
In 1 hour, yeah.
or even an hour and 15 minutes or something. Why don't we, could we plan on doing it at like 2:15?
At 2:15?
Yeah. So I think we can get done with our committee meeting that day, and y'all don't have a committee meeting that day. So that should give us time, and if 1 or 2 other people apply, go ahead and let's talk to them too.
Okay.
Yeah, sound good? Great. Yeah, so if you're interested in Board of Adjustments, please give us a call or email the county clerk,
Thank you.
and he'll get you an application. It's very easy to do online. All right. I have the next item on the agenda, which is board and commission updates.
I have an exciting update from our Early Childhood Committee, which is that Commissioner Moore was elected as chair of that today, so very excited to share that news.
Thank you, Jasmine. Sorry, I'm not choked up. That's Diet Coke. But thank you for your service on that. It's truly been inspiring to watch how much good we've done in our community around early childhood education, and excited to see the next chapter.
Excellent. Great.
I have an update as well. And before I start, thank you, Commissioner Beach-Ferrara, for your service. You've been so instrumental in that work. Really appreciate you. So I have an update from the Asheville-Buncombe Regional Sports Commission from the 4 founding members. We met this morning on October 3rd, and we did vote to change the bylaws to sunset the founding member model and to create a board of directors. It was a 4-0 unanimous vote. The founding members started this assessment of the Asheville-Buncombe Regional Sports Commission to build upon the successes of the Sports Commission. As I said in our meeting today, we agreed to sunset the founding members and establish a board of directors. And that process to revise those bylaws will begin accordingly as soon as possible. So within the next few weeks, I'll have a further update on what that is specifically going to look like for the Sports Commission.
Brownie, I think it might be worthwhile for me to briefly update our colleagues on the point in time count that we got from the Affordable Housing Committee today. For those of you that don't know, HUD either allows or requires, I'm not actually sure, a point in time count every January. Jasmine and I went out wandering around Oakley last January to participate. There was some analysis done by HUD and staff, and I'll try not to paraphrase what they told us today incorrectly, but I guess starting with some good news, they kind of break up the unhoused between sheltered and unsheltered persons. And I'm going to give you the 2020 numbers, the 2022 numbers, and the 2023. So in 2020, we were at 547 total persons unhoused, jumping up to a peak of 637 in 2022. And the good news here being it's dropped down to 573 as of the 2023 point in time count. Like I said, kind of, HUD does some analysis. I think some of the bad news, fine print here is when it comes to the demographics, I think that the transgendered unhoused persons in raw numbers is super low, but has steadily increased with time. I think you could say the same thing for African-American persons as well. The last thing to note is, I said the numbers this year has gone down from last year. What is on the horizon, more good news, is the Days In project, the Homeward Bound project. We just had that ribbon cutting, and by this coming January, we should expect that place to be filled up. So we should expect some of these numbers to improve yet again. And then there's I always get the hotel wrong, Ramada Inn, Shangri-La. Yeah. Anyway, the other facility that is opening that should, in addition, I think by 2025 January point in time count, should be reflected in those numbers as well. So.
All right, any other updates? Great. A couple of announcements. October 17th at 3 p.m., the county commissioners will hold their briefing meeting at 200 College Street, room 326 in downtown Asheville. On October 17th at 5 p.m., the county commissioners' regular meeting will be held at 200 College Street, room 326 in downtown Asheville. We do have a need for an additional closed session. Mr. Frew, can you explain the purpose?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A5, to discuss a real estate matter, the price and other material terms, and we do anticipate the possibility that the board might have to come back out in closed session to make a vote.
Okay. Is there a motion to go into closed session? All right, there's a motion and second, and as Mr. Frew said, this is normally the part of the meeting where I say we are going to have a closed session, and after the closed session, we're just going to adjourn, but we, in this case, might actually do something regarding this real estate matter. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're into closed session.